Up to a few years ago, I never even considered living in Bulgaria. I never even thought that it was a possibility for me. And I even remember distinctly a time while I was in high school and our grandpa was asking us, like, do you think you'll ever live in Bulgaria? And I was like, probably not. Well, did life have a different story in line for me?
This is the Back to Bulgaria podcast. Discover life in Bulgaria, one story at a time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Back to Bulgaria podcast, the podcast where you will gain a perspective of what it's like to live and thrive here in Bulgaria. I'm your host, Anna-Maria Andreeva. I am a crazy American-born Bulgarian who has lived in many different cities, and now I can officially say I've made Sofia, Bulgaria, my home. Together with my sister, who's just as crazy, we decided to start this podcast to showcase the amazing stories of other people who have also decided to move back to Bulgaria or stay here and are doing amazing things in this country. We will discuss various topics from the basics of living to Bulgaria to building a life here or starting a business. We discuss the topics that matter to those who are interested in creating impact and living a meaningful life here in Bulgaria. And today I am here with my co-host, Anna-Maria Andreeva. You guys have seen her in several episodes in the past. She is not only my fellow co-host, but also, my sister.
No way.
Yeah. I would say that she is someone who's not only a proud Texan, which she's really proud about being a Texan, but she's an even prouder Bulgarian. After graduating from UT Austin, she took a leap of faith and left her comfortable home in Texas to the unfamiliar Sofia, where she explored the opportunity to venture into international marketing. Passionate about diversity and community, she will share with us her experience studying in Texas. She'll tell us about her move to Sofia and why she believes good leadership can be the route to making a change here in Bulgaria. So let's get started. Hey, Annie.
Hi, Kati.
How are you doing?
I'm excited to share my story.
I'm excited to hear it. I don't think I've heard it properly, actually, your story. Just bits and pieces here and there. Maybe before we get started, share with us something we should know about you before we dive deep into your story and what you've learned.
Yeah, I think something that you should know about me is that up to a few years ago, I never even considered living in Bulgaria. I never even thought that it was a possibility for me. And I even remember distinctly a time while I was in high school and our grandpa was asking us, like, do you think you'll ever live in Bulgaria? And I was like, probably not. Well, did life have a different story in line for me?
Yes, it did.
I got to experience life first in Europe, studying abroad in Europe. So that brought me to Bulgaria. And now I live here. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember for me, it was something that I had motivated you to consider.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I didn't think you would
you
take the step.
definitely paved the way for me and made it a possibility in my mind.
Well, thank you for sharing with us before we get started. Maybe let's get started with, where were you raised? What was your life before you came here in Bulgaria?
Well, I was born in the States, which for a lot of people is like shocking when I first meet them, especially here in Bulgaria, because they're like, oh, why are you here? But yeah, I was born in Minnesota. I was surrounded with family all the time. I lived in Minnesota until I was 7 years old. And in that time, my great-grandma was a big part of raising me. Like when our parents moved to the States, our whole family basically came by the time I was born. And so both sides of the grandparents were mainly there while I was growing up. But our great-grandma came when I was 4, and she was a big influence in me being able to even know Bulgarian. And I'm really thankful for that.
It was actually, you were better at speaking in Bulgarian than you were in English. When
was that a thing? What?
You spoke Bulgarian fluently
when
you were 3 years old.
3?
Yeah, 3, 4. Like before you went to preschool, you spoke Bulgarian very well.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, would you look at that? Well, I guess, yeah, Baba Kalinka, my
That's
great
her name.
grandma, she taught me a lot of what I know about the Bulgarian language because she didn't know any of English. And so she spoke to me in Bulgarian, I spoke to her in English. And that's how we both learned the languages and how I grew up. And also in Minnesota, we were always constantly around our family, our extended family. I was very close with my cousin, Alex, and as our other cousins were born with my other cousins. And that was a big part of my value of family. And that's still something that I hold really close to me. But then when I was 7, we decided to move to Houston, Texas, which was a great decision, in my personal opinion. Although at the time I thought it was a terrible decision.
Both of us did, yeah.
Yeah. But I was like super dramatic about it. And I was like, oh, I miss the cold. I miss my cousins. I miss my family. Why are we doing this?
It's crazy how we seem to believe that Minnesota was such a great place to live.
But in Texas, I feel like it was really the start of my path of developing myself because from the get-go, we were in completely different environments than we were in Minnesota. Minnesota was quite, let's say, white, not that much diversity. But in Houston, I just thought it was pretty cool, actually, from the beginning that I was surrounded by so many different cultures, so many different kids from different countries that thought in very different ways from me. I was able to really appreciate diversity, especially later on in high school when we moved to Pearland. It's the most diverse suburb in Texas, I think, and one of the most diverse in the whole United States. So there was like all types of languages spoken, all types of people. But at the same time, I could relate to these people because they were either immigrants themselves or they were children of immigrants like me. And somehow that brought us together in a way that we could relate to each other because our families were different than all the other families that were considered normal American.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what made us like be close, at least in the beginning, because we were just interested in all types of things. K-pop, K-dramas at first, then we like were into Bollywood movies and all types of food. We would do all types of cultural events. And so I really went into this identity of like, I am Bulgarian because that's what's different about me here. And that's, I think, where I was able to really like appreciate that I'm different and that that's what makes me special. Yeah. And that's one of the things that makes me special. And each other person is also different and that makes them special too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good perspective. I mean, I think the unique part about this episode and podcast is right that we know each other very well and we've kind of seen each other grow up a bit
in these phases of life,
seen different things. And I do know that I joke about it quite a lot, that all of your friends are all Asian and
not all of them.
Outside of the jokes, I think that is something that really helped you grow into the person you are right now.
And I think that really set me up well for going into university, exploring the world. But also at the same time, we were also very active in our Bulgarian community. And I was always around, like every weekend around Bulgarians, around like people speaking Bulgarian. And then like every summer since I think 7th or 8th grade, we would come to Bulgaria. And more I saw how great it is, how beautiful it is. Every time I'd go back, I'd have post-Bulgaria depression.
That is a thing. People do discuss this, post-Bulgaria depression. You mentioned we were in a Bulgarian community in Houston. What did this community look like?
Well, our Bulgarian community was at first based on our Bulgarian church, one in Houston, and there I met one of my best friends, Joy, and she's also born in the States but is Bulgarian.
Shout out to Joy. I guess.
Shout out to Joy. Through that, we got to know more Bulgarians outside of just the church. We went to Bulgarian parties. We went to folk dancing lessons and performances. It was, I think, a pretty big part of my life, especially in high school, that I'm quite thankful for. It's just, I think, a unique thing that allowed me to even consider living in Bulgaria later on.
The biggest value, I think, of the Bulgarian community was learning the horo dances, the folk dances, because it somehow opened up the chances for us to join horos, right? When we're here in Bulgaria.
Yeah, everybody's amazed at how well I know folk dances.
Yeah, because people here don't always know the folk dances.
And I was actually surprised about that when I came, that there's people that don't know it.
Yeah, it's surprising because we learned it in Houston, right?
It was like necessary. It was mandatory.
It wasn't mandatory, but we enjoyed it. And it was a way for us to connect to our culture, right? It was fun. And in general, I think horos, dancing in a horo, has this magical energy to it somehow. All of us holding each other's hands and all of us doing the same movements together. And you never see a Bulgarian frowning when they're dancing. Most people are very excited when they're doing
most
dancing.
People are excited. Yeah,
horo.
That's true.
So after high school, you were on the path of deciding where to study.
Yeah.
And I remember I was pushing you all the time to come to Europe. Come on, come to Europe. But
yeah,
you went another way.
Well, I wanted to stay in the States, to study in the States, because I saw the opportunity. And honestly, I had no idea what to do about applying to colleges, preparing for applications and stuff. So I really just spread my net quite wide. I was quite good in math and sciences in high school. So in some universities I applied as for chemistry or some like physics stuff or whatever. And then in some I applied as international relations or undeclared.
I didn't know you applied for some universities in more the science side.
Yeah, I did. I don't know if that was the best logic, but at the end, I ended up going to University of Texas in Austin, studying international relations and global studies. And I think that was a really good decision because I got a lot from that school, not just from the amazing professors that I met there and the courses that I took, because they were quite passionate about what they were teaching and the students. And I was in relatively smaller classes because I was in that type of program, but it just allowed me to even more discover diversity, discover not just diversity in cultures, but also in careers and stuff I could do. And that I don't need to just necessarily do only one thing. My major was focused on interdisciplinary studying. So
what does that mean?
In international relations, I could focus on the economics. I could focus on the cultures themselves. I could focus on being a diplomat. I could focus on all types of other things. But also, I didn't just have to do international relations. I also did stuff related to global management, managing different cultures. I also did computer science because just in case, it was actually quite interesting to me. That allowed me to have a wider grasp of the world. And also to study abroad.
Before we get into studying abroad, can we a bit discuss, I'm pretty sure maybe most of our audience knows how pricing goes in the US, but can we discuss a bit how the cost of university affected where you would go to university? I remember I was pulling you and saying, you should come to Europe because it won't cost so much to study here. There's also great universities here.
Yeah, the cost of university did have a huge effect on where I went. Although I did receive quite a lot of scholarships because I was top of my class. But
to be humble and everything.
Yeah, but even with those scholarships, I just didn't want to pay that much money. For example, UCLA. In California, I would have had to pay $60,000 per year.
It's crazy, $60,000 a year.
Yes.
Does that count dorm or anything like that, or that's just tuition?
I think that was everything included, with dorm and stuff. But that was outside of the scholarship that I got, which was $36,000 per year. it was a lot of money. And there was other places, but at University of Texas, it was the best of both worlds in that it was a very good university. It was relatively inexpensive. It was up to like $12,000 per year, which I know is a lot for Europe. But with all the like federal grants that I got and scholarships and some loans, but not too many loans, I was able to, for the most part, get through without having to spend even the loans that I got.
Which is amazing. I mean,
Yeah, that's quite unique for the States, I gotta say. Honestly, it was, in my opinion, worth it because for me, I think that it was just the right kind of transition from having like lived at home up until then, and then to go somewhere that was 3 hours away from home and being surrounded by some people that I knew, but a lot of people, 55,000 people that I didn't know.
yeah.
And all these like awesome professors and clubs, organizations, a cool city, Austin, Texas. Like for me, I think it was the right decision. But I also encourage our cousins to look into studying abroad, looking into studying in Europe because it is an option. And I was quite happy to be able to do it when I studied abroad.
Yeah. So that is the unique thing about your program, and is the fact that it included studying in France.
Yeah, it was necessary, mandatory to have a study abroad. So I applied for the program that was in France, but there was programs all over the world. I chose France because I had been studying French for forever. I'm quite happy that I did because that opened me up to the possibility of living in Europe and eventually studying in Europe. So I studied for a month in Paris, France, and then I studied for 4 months in Reims, France. That was another transition, like having, for the first time, living abroad relatively alone. Yes, I was in a host family, but that's a whole nother story. And I was able to travel a lot, go around Europe, interact with Europeans. Quite different than Bulgaria. I saw the difference between Western Europe and Eastern Europe at that time. The types of like cultural orientations people had and stuff like this, because that was something I was focusing on in my studies. But yeah, I was able to see that studying in France was also a possibility for me, and it's something that I would want to do one day for my master's, hopefully.
And from what I remember, after you studied in France and lived in Europe for a little bit, you were a bit worried going back to the US, and you were wondering, will I like life again in the US? I remember you were sharing this with me.
Well, since I lived in France, it was a whole roller coaster from there leading to Bulgaria, because I went back and I was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but it's fun. I enjoyed living with my friends again in our apartments, but I only had like less than 3 months actually in school before COVID happened. It was kind of sad, but it was also a time for me to be able to reflect on what I've experienced in university and in studying abroad and coming back and how that felt. It was just, I had to get used to the rigid life again, I guess, because it was a lot more free in France. Because I was not only studying, I was traveling all the time. But I think that was a little bit biased because I was a student from abroad. That's the whole point of studying abroad. When COVID happened, or actually before COVID happened, I was thinking about doing an internship abroad because I wanted some international experience. I had done an internship in Austin, it was great, but I wanted to see what it's like working abroad. And even before COVID happened, I looked into like how I could do that. I contacted our uncle Emu to ask him for some advice. And
Emu lives here in Sofia.
Yeah, Emu is from Sofia, and he connected me with the company that he works for. From there, I connected with them, and I opened myself to the idea of working abroad in Bulgaria.
Yeah, I was a bit shocked when you decided to do your internship here, though I really wanted you to do it.
You kind of pushed me to.
Pushed. But I I was surprised that you actually went for it because I didn't think you would actually do it.
By the time like I figured out that I'd be able to, it was past the summer after the first part of COVID. And I saw that classes are going to be online because it was my final year of university. So I saw classes are going to be online. I checked with like my professors to see if it's possible for me to just be in Bulgaria. And they were like, yeah, why not? And so I contacted Tessie because they had said that they're interested in like me doing the internship. And I was like, what if I do it during the semester?
Which you did apply for the internship,
Yeah,
right?
I applied.
To make it clear.
To make it clear, I applied. I sent my CV. I went through interviews. I also applied to another internship actually because I was set on being in Bulgaria for the semester because I didn't want to go back in the States. So I decided I'm going to stay here. I'm going to do my classes, and if I get an internship, that'll be great. So I had actually gotten another offer for an internship. But it was full time, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to juggle all this. So I went with the internship with Tessie, which was part time, and it was quite great. It was like my trial period. Mm-hmm. Now that I look back, I didn't think of it at the time as a trial period. I wasn't yet thinking that I would someday live in Bulgaria, but looking back now, it was like trying out living here, trying out. Getting used to the Bulgarian mindset, I guess, like the lifestyle here.
So you did end up staying here for, was it 6 months, I think?
Yeah.
And you were where were you living?
I was living in Studenski Grad, but kind of outside of it, and it was empty because it was COVID, so nothing was happening. It was quite quiet, but it was nice to be like, I could see the mountains, I could see the park in front of me. My colleagues were quite great because they would come and pick me up and drive me to work.
Yeah, I remember that the commute from that place to your work wasn't great.
Yeah, but that barely happened while I was an intern. They treated me well.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you.
So yeah, and then I would come home and I would study, explore Sofia. That was when I was able to like really get to know Sofia, because before that we wouldn't come here a lot at all.
No, we only came here as a transition place.
My family was completely against like living in Sofia.
We do have family members that do live here, but
Yeah.
our close family, they're not a fan of Sofia. If anything, it's always, oh, Sofia's so dirty.
But it was also nice to get closer to my family that does live in Sofia during that time, which I tried to take full advantage of, is to be able to get to know them better.
Yeah, that's something you definitely are great at, is that you put a lot of effort and love towards our family members. So you did the internship here. When you did the internship, was there anything that was challenging that you thought, oh, this is a culture shock? Or
I mean, the whole time was unconsciously challenging for me because it was a very dynamic time. I mean, COVID was happening. There was different rules every day. I would hear what's happening in the States. It was election year in the States. People were always asking me about that. But I was thankful that I had a pretty cool place to live, even though it was technically illegal for me to live there. There was also nobody else in the building at first. And then when people came to the building, the power would constantly go out. And I would have to go out and turn it back on.
yeah.
But it was also nice because there was a rooftop and I could go up and see all of Sofia and the mountains. But yeah, it was also like the shock of going to work every day too.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, before that, your internship in Austin was actually,
it was remote. Like we would meet up every once in a while with my boss, which was the CEO of the company Seeker. And it was a very different work dynamic. I did marketing for them, and I would go every once in a while. They would have events every once in a while. I would like help.
It was more on the go, on your laptop.
Yeah.
Not so much staying in the office.
Yeah, it wasn't in the office. And when I came here, it was in the office, like quite often. At one point, we had to be working from home every other week. It was interesting to have all that at once. I think it's quite a unique experience, honestly. And I would honestly recommend it to people to get that experience working abroad, even if you're not planning on working abroad, because it really opens up your eyes on how people think differently and how stuff works differently here. than it would in the States. It was all a lot, but I was thriving.
You were thriving.
Because it was fun.
You were up to the challenge.
I was up to the challenge, yeah, and I was enjoying it, and I was learning a lot every day, which I really appreciated the opportunity to do that. And at the same time, keep up with my friends in the States too.
Which is also a juggle, keeping up with friends abroad while you're abroad. It's a balance.
Yeah,
that you
I
have
had
to juggle.
to, at first, with some of my friends, teach them to keep up with me while I'm abroad.
Teach them.
Because sometimes people just, when they don't see you all the time, they're like, okay, I'll talk to them when they're back. But for me, I'd like to keep up while I'm not physically near my friends, because yeah, I hold them really dear to me, and they're part of my everyday life.
And then, so your internship ended and it was time to go back to the US. You graduated.
Well, first, I had a whole semester before I graduated.
Okay.
And COVID in the States continued.
It seems that COVID was actually a big part of your...
Yeah, it was a big part of my transition. COVID changed my life. I mean, honestly, yeah. But I guess in a good way, because I decided that I'm going to somehow make the most out of it. Yes, we were locked down at home, but I decided to reflect on myself and figure out what this means for me, what I could do in this time.
COVID was definitely an interesting time also for me, because in the Netherlands, it was a different vibe. Like, we had lockdowns where you can't go out somewhere after a certain time. COVID in the beginning kind of made me go into a little bubble, I guess, even though I was living with 6 people in a house, and maybe that's why. So at least I had entertainment.
At least you had people around you.
But yeah, COVID seems to have impacted all of us one way or another.
The world is different for sure.
Yeah.
I know that I am quite privileged to be able to have done what I did during COVID, because I somehow found the places that I could like go to not be in that constant like fear of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
When I went back to the States, there was that fear of COVID.
Yeah.
And there was that fear in general, people.
That was a great
crazy.
thing here, I think, that people were not so afraid. And I think that's what created this balance. For me, like Netherlands, people were afraid. Genuinely, at least that's what they would share with each other, this kind of fear. And for some reason, I didn't feel this fear. That's not what closed me up. What closed me up was that everyone else was feeling fear. And I felt like I couldn't share the fact that I'm not afraid. Yeah. That's COVID. And luckily it's gone and passed, and hopefully we never have to think about it again.
Never have to do that again. Let's pray for that. But
yeah. So you graduated, you decided it's time to look for a job, or
No.
where was your mind at?
Well, as I was approaching my graduation, I was working on my thesis, which I was concentrating on Bulgaria and the EU's effect in Bulgaria.
Which is actually a very interesting topic.
Yeah, I was looking at how, since Bulgaria has entered the EU, what effect it's had on its GDP, on its development, on its corruption, and whether or not it's done anything about these things. Also agriculture. And I found some interesting things.
If you could summarize it in one sentence.
I'd say that the EU definitely helped Bulgaria out of a rough patch, because once communism fell in Bulgaria and democracy all of a sudden came in, it was kind of chaotic from what I could tell of the GDP and development and corruption, according to the research I did. So once we entered the EU, it became a little bit more stable. And yes, the economy has grown since we entered the EU. But what I found is that I was comparing the GDP of Western Europe with that of the countries that had joined around when Bulgaria joined, which was a lot of Eastern Europe. And I found that there was a huge gap between the economic growth of Western Europe and that of the countries in Eastern Europe. And I also saw that corruption had not necessarily been addressed through the European Union, and that they were funding projects and people were taking advantage of it, which still continues to this day. And I couldn't understand why the EU had continued to fund these projects that were being taken advantage of. They must have known what was happening here, yet they continued to do so. And then there were some political things having to do with Boyko Borisov and the EU's support of him. But we're past that part.
Yes, we're past that.
Anyways.
So you did this research, I guess.
It definitely got me more interested in Bulgaria, even more interested in Bulgaria. And I wasn't looking for a job, actually. I told myself that I'm going to give myself time and I want to see what's out there because I didn't feel the pressure to immediately get a job. But I did feel the pressure of my friends telling me how much they're going to be making at their new jobs. However, yes, I overcame that pressure and the summer came and I went back to Bulgaria.
Yeah. And you got a job.
So I got a job, but I was not intending to get a job. And I got a message from my boss from Tessie. She's like, hey, let's meet up. And so I went to meet up and she was like, oh, we have some open positions that I think you would be interested in. We enjoyed working with you. We'd love to work with you again. And it was a great opportunity. And so in a matter of a few days, I said, all right, I'm living in Bulgaria now and I'm working here.
It was a very spontaneous decision. And again, something that I didn't expect from you.
Like I had thought about it, but it was like 3 days. They gave me 3 days to decide if I'm going to move to a whole new continent.
Yeah.
That was a bold move on their part. But all right, that got me here. And then I had to look for an apartment in Sofia, which I found in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to my grandpa, Jado Angel, for helping me get that done.
Yeah.
And the next chapter of life started in Bulgaria.
No, it's very great that we do have family here. I think that's something that helps us a lot in our transition to Bulgaria.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that. Their openness also to encouraging me while I've been here.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
When you moved here. Maybe let's start with the shock you had around work and what it's like to actually really work in Bulgaria.
The thing that I realize now is that I didn't necessarily have much to compare it to since I didn't work in a corporate or in an office environment in the States. I only expected what I was taught in university to expect, which was about the American corporate life. But I think it was more that I was navigating the culture shock of being in Bulgaria for real, not having that like backup of, oh, you know, I could go back to America whenever I want. That really like caused me to have that culture shock. And that was really just around like the unpredictability of life here, which in some ways I'm very grateful for. But at that time, it was like kind of all at once. Actually, during that time, it was great that I was in this Bulgarian environment of work, kind of like diving deep into Bulgarian work culture. It was different than what I expected in that it was quite more or less flexible. At least in the beginning, I had kind of room to like figure out what was going on. You know, also like learning how to communicate well in Bulgarian was something that continued to be difficult while I was working. Like more and more I saw phases when I would be like learning and speaking and writing and listening. But then all of a sudden, like I lose all the words. One morning I go and my colleague is like, Anni, what happened? you were speaking so well yesterday.
It's this kind of day. I'm speaking a different language today. French
No,
is in my mind today.
Yeah, I've noticed these like phases. It happened at least 3 times. But I would get back on it. Sometimes you learn so much and then your brain is like, need a break. And then you learn a bunch more and then your brain is like, another break.
It's completely normal.
But
your brain is absorbing so many new experiences.
I'd say like having worked here was a big advantage because it really made me dive deep into Bulgarian language, communication, and culture.
That's good to hear that nuances of of your life, because that's true. Here you were challenged by things that came so naturally to you before.
Yeah.
And you had to relearn them here. Well, other than work, there's also life. So was there anything, any bumps along the road and outside of work that you experienced?
Well, one story that I like to tell as one of my culture shocks is that I was driving around our parents' car and I parked somewhere in Lulen, maybe a little bit close to another car. In their opinion,
for
too
people
close.
that don't know, what is Lulen?
Lulen is just another neighborhood in Sofia that's quite large, in some ways sketchy. Yeah, so I parked and then I came back and my window wipers were broken.
We like to joke about this because there's a song.
Yeah, there's a song, "Кой ми открадна чистачките,"
Todor Kolev.
which means why did you take my window wipers? Because it's something that happens often here when you piss off somebody else and they're like, okay, I'm going to show you that you pissed me off by lifting up your window wipers. But it was a whole story. I was like, what in the world? Why? And coincidentally, there was this kind man who was a mechanic, because there's a mechanic next to where I parked. There was like auto shop. He was like, oh, let me help you. You're struggling. I was like, okay, please help me. He helped me at least get them secure so I could go home. And then he told me, like, come back and we can replace them.
That is something that I really do value here, is that people are willing to help when they see you are in need.
Yeah, it's happened to me quite a few times, because as somebody that wasn't used to the lifestyle here yet and how things work, there's people that are genuinely interested in helping you and will stop and see that something's up and will offer to help in some way. Mm-hmm. This happened to me last week too, because I was with my friends in Peshtera with the kind of old car. On our way back, we stopped to get some coffee, and I guess my friend had left the headlights on. So the battery went out, and we were like, hey, the car won't start. What do we do now? And so we just went out, and these two old grandpas came and helped us, and we're like, oh, you need some battery, I'll go get my car. And then like some lady from across the street saw that we need a jumper cable. She came with this purse and was like, here you go. So we had 2 jumper cables at the end, and they were just very helpful, and we were very thankful. They saw that we were not from Peshtera and not even from Bulgaria, but they're very kind and made sure that we got our car running.
I consider that amazing. I mean, not that in other countries people won't help you. They will also help you. But here also,
they'll give everything of themselves to help you, especially in smaller cities, in smaller towns. Like Peshtera is a small town. So yeah, there's unpredictability, but then there's people that are genuinely open and willing to help and make sure that you're okay.
Yeah. So you've lived here now for 2 years. How would you say your life has evolved in the different aspects of your life? How has moving to Bulgaria impacted that?
In the past 2 years, I've definitely gone through a few different stages of life. I'd say I've grown a lot. I think something that really stood out to me is that in the beginning, it was kind of difficult for me to find my community and find friends. And it was weird for me because I'm a person that I know I'll always find friends wherever I go. But I think it was just that there was so much happening all at once. And honestly, that was a lot of stress. It's not easy to do. But I feel like it took me a while to just like settle in. And then I was able to find a really great community. First, I found like friends that even were from the States, and they're here doing initiatives like focused on the youth and helping them go and volunteer in hospitals, seeing the medical sphere here, which is a really great work that I hope will help Bulgaria's medical sphere develop, and healthcare workers will support healthcare workers. But also I went to events. That's how I went to Entrepreneurs Night Out, where I met Stoyan and Alex and other people that have been on our podcast. I shared our idea about Završtene, and I met just awesome people who have been a huge blessing in my life. Being in Bulgaria has made me be even more outgoing and comfortable talking to people about my ideas and stuff that I believe in and stuff that I support. And there's been a lot of like openness from other people as well, talking about what they want to do, what they believe in, what they hope. And like as I was able to really become part of a community here, I think that passion for helping other people do that as well really came in. I got more interested in the idea of Zavrstne v Bulgaria because we even had that idea way before I moved here. But it really, I think, connected me to not just my story of coming here and being part of Bulgarian culture, but also more to the story of our parents and why they moved abroad and like how that affected me, because it's kind of strange. Our parents moved abroad so we could have a better life there. But we were like, okay, we have a great life here, but let's try out Bulgaria.
Yeah. It was not an easy transition the first time around.
It wasn't. And also, yeah, you were a big role model for me, even in considering to come here, because you came here first and you paved the way for people in our family to want to move here, to start our završtene. Mm-hmm. Another thing that has impacted my life is that in work, it was all about learning, gaining experience, and like really growing. And I was able to work with people from all over the world. I loved hearing their insights and like people from Bangladesh, Egypt, from Poland. It was a really good experience for me in that. But it was also something that inspired me to realize how important leadership is. Being able to lead a team, lead an organization in a way that makes people see their purpose and see that they're on the same page as everybody else. Bulgarian work culture has its ups and downs. At least you have 20 days of paid vacation every year. But if anything, I got that out of it, my passion for leadership. But yeah, then when you came here, I had somebody to live with, grew the community even more, realized that the work environment that I was in wasn't for me, and that although they were great supports in my transition to moving in Bulgaria, it wasn't the place that I was growing anymore. Yeah. So I had to transition out of that.
Which I think is a great growth on your side, because it's not an easy decision to make, something from which you're making an income, and it's how you came to Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And to decide, okay, do I feel great working here? Do I see a clear way of how I'll grow in this company that will benefit me and where I want to go? It takes a lot of reflection and a lot of courage.
I think that a lot of the time, people in general, and I can get stuck in the idea of, oh, I'm working at this job, maybe I just have to try harder. Maybe it's because I am foreign and they're not understanding me, or I'm not understanding them. But at the end of the day, you have to see, is this where you're going to continue growing? And I decided that it's not. And I wanted to do everything possible to make sure that my transition out of there was good for me and for the company. And that was really interesting then, continuing to live in Bulgaria after I quit my first job here, because first when I moved here, it was all surrounded around that I was working here, so I have to live here. But then it became, I don't work here anymore. I don't need to be here anymore, but I want to continue exploring what life here is like, and growing my community here, investing in Bulgaria, investing in myself and in other people here, and the potential of this country.
Yeah. That's I actually didn't know about that's what you were thinking about when you finished working for your employer, and that was something that was in your mind. Well, other than that, is there any other ways Bulgaria has impacted your life?
Well, I've been able to travel a lot. I've definitely taken full advantage of the cheap Wizz and Ryanair tickets. But I've also, since being here, grown stronger in my faith and really had to become even more humble, because with moving here, everything was super unpredictable. and being able to just humble myself and be like, maybe I need to ask somebody. Maybe I can't do all this on my own. Something that has definitely been a huge lesson for me here.
But that's the difference in mindset, that in the US, you're just so used to being independent.
Yeah, but also in the US, I wouldn't be in this, I guess, unpredictable situation. It's more structured and more predictable, which, yes, is more comfortable. But for me, it was kind of boring. Here, I'm not bored.
You have to solve problems all the time.
Even if I try to be bored, I've just been able to explore more. And I'm 24 years old. So I've grown 2 years since I got here, and there's a lot more to grow and to see.
Oh, definitely. I don't think that ever stops.
Definitely, yes.
If you wanted people to get one thing from your story and one thing they need to know before they move here.
One thing.
Yeah, one thing.
Why you do this to me?
What will that one thing be?
I'd say the thing that comes to the top of my mind is that it's not as scary as you think it is. And there's people here that are really interested in you and your abilities and your skills. And there's opportunities that are just waiting for people to literally just come and take them, because there's so many things that are not yet even like created in Bulgaria, niches that are just out there for the taking. And as long as you have the will to pursue something, it's quite possible to do so in Bulgaria.
Yeah, and I think the stories of the episodes we've had so far, people coming here,
that's a testament.
They prove that that's true. It's not just in our minds, you know?
Yeah, because a lot of time we can think that we're in a bubble and like these people are just people that we see around us. But I've seen more and more with more and more people coming to us around the podcast that no, it's not just our bubble. There's a lot of things happening in Bulgaria and a lot of opportunities that are open doors for people to just come and take the opportunities and help in Bulgaria's developments in society and whatever they want to do.
Yeah, there's so much space open, so many opportunities open. You just have to be willing to put the hard work, building something that doesn't yet exist or have a place here in Bulgaria. But if you're willing to put in the hard work, I truly believe you could at least make a spot for yourself and grow.
It's definitely not easy.
No, it's definitely not.
There is a lot of hurdles people would have to go through. There's a lot of hurdles that I've had to go through. There's uncertainties. There's stuff that you can't predict, like related to health even. I had a scary encounter a couple of times with the healthcare system, but there are people here actively working to make it better. And I guess from me, it's a call for people to consider coming back, apply their skills, and help in the development of Bulgaria.
Yeah. So how do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And how would you like Bulgaria to grow in 5 years' time?
I see myself hopefully either pursuing my master's or having already finished my master's. Will you see? I really want to get a master's. I'm not 100% sure in what yet, but I would like it to be in France. But I am open to other opportunities, honestly. I don't know. My thoughts have gone back and forth since I moved to Bulgaria. I like to continue growing my community here, growing my community in Europe. So far, 2 of my high school friends have pursued living in Europe. It would be pretty cool if more came. And yeah, I would love to be in a relationship. No pressure there though. Yeah, just continue having a good time with friends, family, traveling. And for Bulgaria, I really hope to see more and better leadership. I think a theme that I've seen since I came here is that there's a lack of good leadership. There's a lack of being able to organize people in a way that benefits both them and whatever organization they're part of, whether it's in politics, we see that there is not good leadership, or in work, in the workplace. I would really like to see more programs opening for developing leadership skills, for seeing that it's not just the job of a leader to tell other people what to do, but to work together with the people that they're leading and to make an effort towards a goal that everybody sees and is on the same page about. Although I am quite happy that there is already initiatives and organizations that do have very good leadership, like people that we've seen in the podcast so far, especially Colectivat. I think that they are paving a way not just in urban space development and these new ideas, but also I see that their leadership is very well organized in that they inspire other people to be a part of them. And I hope to see that happening more and more in Bulgaria, more and more in the workspaces, and that we even come out as leaders eventually in leadership.
That is a big hope. That's a great hope to have for Bulgaria, though. But I think it will take a lot of learning.
It'll take a lot of work.
A lot of work, but it's a great hope. I also hope that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you see yourself being part of change in Bulgaria and impacting what life is like here?
I think that I really see a vision for Zvrshtene Bulgaria and in our podcast as well. I see how it's already affecting people and how people, even if it's in a way that like, oh, you know, what do you mean? Why would people come back? It's still getting their attention. And now they're thinking about why would people come back? So I already see the impact, and I hope that the impact continues. And I see myself being a part of the change that comes through Zvrshtene Bulgaria, because I see it as a way of people, not only people abroad coming back to Bulgaria and having that transition and being able to navigate that transition and then getting involved actively in society here, but also a way of people here where they've already made that move or are just like working on being part of the change. They see like that it's not just them, that there's other people, and they feel even more encouraged. I feel like that's something that I think anybody could benefit in, knowing that they're not alone in their ideas and their passions, and yeah, especially in coming back to Bulgaria.
That's a great thing for me to hear, because I've never heard you say exactly how you hope you would have an impact. And I think that's a beautiful way in saying it, that you wish to create a community of people, and that they don't feel alone in what they're doing, whether it's they don't feel alone, that they feel that they want to move back, or also that they don't feel alone, that, hey, I love Bulgaria and I want to do something great, and maybe I'm not crazy for wanting to do that.
Yeah. Also, a side note, I would also like to see more diversity and more inclusion of not only the Roma population, but also people from abroad here, because I love diversity.
Yes. And now we're going to our favorite part of the podcast, grabbing a question from the bowl, reading it out loud, and letting us know your thoughts.
Okay.
So go ahead and grab a question.
I wrote these. What is your favorite aspect of natural beauty in Bulgaria, from the mountains to the seaside? Oh my. I love the nature of Bulgaria. I feel like I've recently turned more towards favoriting the mountains.
Wow. That's
which is a big thing.
That is shocking.
But the seaside is also up there. This year, I was able to go hiking in the mountains, and I think that really impacted me, because there's a whole culture around going to the mountains. It's not just going hiking. Like you go to huts and lodges, and there's people there waiting for you, welcoming you, and they have food prepared. And like if they know that you're coming, but in general, they have food prepared, and it's just like this whole other world in the mountains, away from everything else. The people are so kind. and caring, and the mountains are just so beautiful and peaceful, and there's like an energy around them that I haven't experienced anywhere else.
The mountains are definitely beautiful here in Bulgaria. I
Yeah,
agree.
we were in the Rodopi Mountains, which I used to associate with a lot of heat and sweating and humidity. But this time I saw that there is so many cool, beautiful landscapes, diversity of vegetation, and animals. We're laughing because I got attacked by a bear, but it wasn't really a bear. Anyways, but that's where I saw a good part of the Bulgarian healthcare system, because I had to get stitches. And I went to the hospital in Smolен, and it was a very good experience because the doctors are very good, young, and they put my stitches in, and everything was great.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Annie, for giving us your point of view, because we've been doing these podcasts, right? We've been asking guests for their story, but we still haven't shared our story. So thank you for helping us better understand you and where you come from.
Yeah, it was great to share my story. I was honestly a little bit nervous coming in. Yeah, it's developing, my story.
Yeah, exactly. We would like to give a shout out to our hosts, the Resonator Innovation Hub, a creative technology hub offering R&D services and affordable access to cutting-edge prototyping labs. From devices and software labs to co-working spaces to podcast meeting spaces, they have a lot to offer. You can check them out on their website, which you can find below in our notes. And also, I would like to thank our audience for listening to us today. I hope Annie's story gave you a new perspective of life in the US, but also life here in Bulgaria and how that transition could look like. I hope it was inspiring and gave you a new outlook. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend that you think will benefit from this story and will also help them. Please subscribe to our channels, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on your favorite podcast channel. Your support means everything to us. Thank you for listening, and go out and do something awesome.